The galaxy thought the humans had gone quiet. It had been centuries since the last war. Centuries since the last time humanity unleashed its fleets and burned empires from the stars. Entire generations of alien civilizations had grown up hearing only stories, legends really, about the dark years when humans were angry. To most, those tales were nothing more than cautionary myths. The kind of bedtime warnings elders told their young: do not provoke Earth, do not wake the Terrans, do not disturb the graves of their dead. But time has a way of softening even the sharpest of scars, and so, across the galaxy, new powers rose. Some studied those old records carefully, others laughed at them. One race, proud and hungry, chose to ignore them entirely. They were called the Cathari. The Cathari were not ancient like the Dorin, nor vast like the Council races. They were new to the galactic stage, new but ambitious. Their fleets were sleek, their soldiers disciplined, their minds sharp, and they did not fear the old stories. After all, humanity had been silent for too long. No fleets, no wars, no threats, no vengeance. The humans had grown soft, the Cathari believed. Perhaps they were hiding, perhaps they had lost their edge, and perhaps it was time to test them. The forgotten battlefield far out on the galactic rim lay a field of wreckage. It was not marked on most modern maps. Those who still remembered it called it the graveyard of stars. There, centuries ago, humans had fought a war so brutal that entire sectors burned. The battlefield had never been cleared. Human warships, alien cruisers, shattered hulls, all still, drifted among the silent dark. But the humans had left behind more than wreckage. Around that graveyard were warning beacons, black, angular machines that pulsed with ancient Terran code. They spoke a single message, repeated endlessly into the void: do not enter, do not disturb the dead, do not awaken what sleeps. Most species obeyed. Some avoided the area entirely, refusing even to chart it, but the Cathari were not most species. To them, the warnings were a challenge, and challenges were meant to be broken. It began as a whisper across the stars, a faint flicker on the edges of long-range sensors. At first it seemed meaningless, just background radiation. But one station, an old observatory manned by a coalition of alien scholars, noticed something strange. The signal had pattern. 1 pulse, then 3, 2, then 4. Then again, repeating endlessly. Dr. Ralin, a Yasari mathematician, leaned closer to the hollow display. His scaled fingers tapped nervously against the console. "This is not random," he muttered. "Look at the intervals. Look at the decay. Rate, it's structured." Beside him, a fellow researcher frowned. "A code?" "Yes, but not one I recognize." The scholars began running comparisons, searching through centuries of archives. At first, nothing matched. Then, late into the night cycle, one of the younger assistants gasped, "I found it." The room fell silent. Projected on the hollow screen was an ancient symbol, a sharp, angular emblem burned into every history record. 2 wings, a star, and the mark of humanity's old war fleets. "It's Terran," the assistant whispered. "No," one spoke for several seconds. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of machines. Finally, Dr. Ralin shook his head. "No, it cannot be. The Terran military codes were buried long ago, sealed by the Galactic Council. There is no way." But the data did not lie. The signal was a Terran distress call, a call not heard in hundreds of years. News traveled quickly. Whispers of the signal spread from observatories to trade hubs, from military posts to council chambers. Most dismissed. "It is impossible. It must be an error," they said. "A ghost signal, nothing more." But the older races remembered. The Valor, who once saw their armadas burned. The Korotan, whose colonies had been reduced to glass. The Dorin, who still carried scars from the Terran wars. They remembered the last time this code was used. And they remembered what followed. Entire empires had fallen, civilizations erased. Humanity had not fought for conquest nor for territory. They had fought for vengeance, and vengeance when it came from Earth was absolute. But the Cathari did not fear. When the warning reached their high command, they laughed. Ancient ghosts, they said, empty threats. To them, the human signal was nothing but an old recording triggered by accident. Perhaps a decaying satellite, perhaps automated defenses long since forgotten, and so they chose not caution, but arrogance. They sent fleets into the graveyard of stars. The beacons warned them away, their messages repeating louder as the ships approached. Cathari captains ignored them. Do not disturb the dead. The Cathari laughed and powered their weapons. Do not awaken what sleeps. The Cathari shattered the first beacon with plasma fire, and in that moment, across the galaxy, something changed. The human code, once faint, surged in strength. It spread across frequencies, bouncing from relay to relay. Observatories scrambled, trying to decode its new message. The translation arrived in fragments, but one line was clear. Contact. Confirmed. Status, hostile, awakening protocols engaged. Silence before the storm for 3 days, nothing happened. The Cathari fleet scoured the graveyard, tearing apart derelict wrecks for scrap. They mocked the old human designs, calling them primitive, outdated, fragile. Their leaders broadcast messages across the council channels, demanding recognition as a new power. The humans are nothing but dust, they boasted, and we, the Cathari, will inherit their place. But in the dark between, stars, silent machines stirred. Ancient satellites powered up, their cores humming after centuries of slumber. Encrypted signals raced toward Sol. And on Earth itself, deep below the surface, alarms began to echo in forgotten bunkers. Dr. Rylian watched the broadcasts with growing dread. He had seen the old records. He had read the eyewitness accounts. Do they not understand? He whispered to himself. Do they not know what they have done? One of his colleagues turned. What are you talking about? Raylan's eyes gleamed in the pale glow of the console. This signal, it is not just a distress call. It is a marker, a trigger. A trigger for what? Raylan swallowed hard. For war. The first mistake on the 12th day, the Cathari made their final mistake. They uncovered the wreck of a Terran battleship, half buried in an asteroid field. Its hull was cracked, its reactors long cold. But inside still rested the symbol of Earth's fleets. Instead of leaving it untouched, the Cathari desecrated it. They dragged the ship into orbit around their colony world. They painted their banners across its hull. They broadcast images of its broken frame, mocking humanity to the entire galaxy. It was the greatest insult they could give. The galaxy held its breath. And then the human signal changed once more. This time, it was not a warning. It was a declaration. Protocol 7 initiated. Terran fleets mobilizing. Across the Sol system, the old war machine stirred. Shipyards once thought abandoned, lit up with energy. Hidden arsenals opened, revealing weapons that no modern species had ever seen. Deep in lunar caverns, ancient warships rumbled to life. Their hulls were black, their cannons glowing faint red. They rose from the dust, like giants awakening from a long sleep, and Earth itself sent its answer, not with words, not with pleas, but with a single broadcast, sent in every tongue, on every channel, to every corner of the galaxy. You woke us. You disturbed the dead. You wanted war. Now you will see why we were meant to be left alone. The galaxy always believed that humanity's silence meant weakness. For centuries, Earth had stayed quiet. Their fleets were docked. Their colonies minded their own business. Their leaders spoke little at galactic councils. And so the Cathari convinced themselves that the old stories were nothing but myths. When the strange Terran code first echoed across the stars, some races trembled. But not the Cathari. To them, it was a sign of opportunity. The first incident was small. A single Cathari fleet, 30 warships, sleek and fast, sent to patrol the graveyard of stars. They entered the sector, their signals flashing confidence. Their commanders boasted on open channels, mocking the ancient wreckage drifting in the void. Hours passed. Then a day, then 3, and then silence. No wreckage, no distress calls, no emergency signals. It was as if the fleet had never existed. The Qatari High Command was furious. They accused rival powers of sabotage, even demanded answers from the Galactic Council. But in the council chambers, the elder species only stared in silence. They remembered what kind of disappearances followed Terran signals. The whispers began to spread. The humans are back. The Cathari, proud and stubborn, refused to believe in ghost fleets or human vengeance. Instead, they doubled down. If humanity was truly returning, then the Cathari would strike first. Their leaders gathered fleets and launched raids across Terran trade routes. At first, they succeeded. One outer colony, small, barely defended, was reduced to ashes. Its surface burned for days, its survivors scattered across escape pods. Convoy after convoy was lost. Dozens of freighters disappeared in flames. The galaxy watched in horror, waiting for Earth's answer. But the humans said, "Nothing." At first the silence made the Cathari laugh. "See," their leaders shouted in grand broadcasts. "The humans are cowards. They hide behind stories, behind their reputation. We are the future of the stars, not them." More fleets poured into Terran space, burning colonies, cutting supply lines, testing defenses. Still, humanity remained silent, but silence from Earth was never safety, it was warning. The first survivor reports came from a lone cargo ship, the Valinor Run. Its crew spoke of shadows that moved faster than scanners could track, shapes slipping between the stars, silent and invisible. The Cathari raiders had jumped the convoy, surrounding it with overwhelming numbers. But before they could fire, the shadows came. One by one, the Cathari ships blinked off the scanners. Some exploded in silence. Others simply vanished, swallowed by the void. The battle was over in minutes. The Valinor Run escaped, drifting half-crippled, carrying only terrified whispers of what they had seen. The crew's final words spread like wildfire. They weren't ships. They were predators. Soon after, more reports trickled in, not from Terran broadcasts, Earth said nothing, but from terrified survivors across the border regions. Stories of Cathari warships dragged into darkness, of entire fleets cut down without firing a shot. One captain swore he saw a massive vessel cloaked in shadows, its hull blacker than space itself. It moved without sound, without signature, and when its cannons fired, the stars themselves seemed to vanish. Another described hearing voices, Terran code, echoing across comms moments before his enemies were destroyed. The descriptions varied, but the message was always the same. The humans were answering, and they were not answering with words. At first, the Cathari tried to silence the rumors. Their leaders declared the missing fleets malfunctions or pirate ambushes, but the galaxy was not fooled. One by one, neutral species pulled back their fleets from Cathari borders. Traders refused to cross their space. Refugees streamed. Out terrified of what was coming, even the Council refused to intervene. The elder races knew better. They had seen this before. Once the Terrans awakened, there was no stopping them. The War Council chamber was filled with shouting. Admirals argued, politicians demanded answers, generals slammed their fists against the table. "They are only myths," one cried. "We have yet to see a single Terran fleet." Another snarled back. "Then explain the silence of our ships. Explain the wreckage drifting on the rim. Explain the shadows." The Cathari Prime, a tall figure with dark ridged skin, raised his hand. The room fell silent. "Let the humans come," he said. "If they are truly returning, then we will crush Them with fire, this is our era, not theirs, and we will prove it. His words carried pride, but in his eyes there was doubt. Back in the observatory, Dr. Raylin and his scholars studied the growing chaos with dread. He traced the Terran code, watching as new transmissions flickered through the void. "It is a pattern," he whispered. "A test." "What do you mean?" one of the younger researchers asked. Raylin leaned closer to the console. "The Terrans are not striking at random. They are testing the enemy, mapping their strength, learning how they move, how they fight. Learning? Yes, preparing." The scholar's eyes grew cold. "This is only the beginning." The Cathari, still defiant, launched a second massive raid. 100 warships sent to attack a human supply corridor. They never came back. No wreckage, no distress calls, just silence. The only clue was a fragment of transmission intercepted by traders. Shadows, everywhere. Stars gone. Can't. And then nothing. The galaxy shivered. By now, the whispers had become roars. The humans are here. They are hunting in the dark. This is the first strike. The Cathari, once arrogant, began to panic. Their colonies fortified their skies. Their fleets retreated closer to their core worlds. Their people whispered in fear, but it was too late. The Terrans had already decided, and humanity never struck once. They struck until nothing was left. Somewhere in the void, beyond scanners and sensors, a vast black ship drifted silently. Its hull bore no markings, save one ancient emblem, the wings and star of the old Terran fleets. Inside, the crew spoke no words. Their orders were simple: hunt, erase, send a message, and so they did. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered what it meant to make humans angry. The first strike had begun. For weeks, the galaxy had waited. They had seen the shadows. In the void, they had heard the whispers of missing fleets, of Cathari ships vanishing without trace. But still, no one had seen Earth itself move. The Council demanded answers. The trade guilds begged for peace. Even rival empires leaned closer, wondering would the humans finally speak. The answer came in the form of a broadcast. Billions tuned in, across thousands of worlds, and what they heard would change the galaxy forever. The chamber of the Galactic Council was vast, a cathedral of light and stone orbiting the central star of the Confederation. Delegates from 100 species filled the seats, their voices a storm of panic. The Cathari ambassador, tall and armored in ceremonial plates, stood in the center, voice booming. "Humanity hides like cowards. They dare not answer us. There." Silence proves their weakness. But then, without warning, every display in the chamber flickered. Across the galaxy, every comms screen, every holo projector, every station, civilian or military, went dark. A single symbol appeared. The old Terran emblem, wings and star, black and silver. The chamber fell silent, and then a voice, calm, cold, human. "You woke us. You disturbed the dead. You wanted war." The voice paused. The silence felt like thunder. "Now you will see why we were meant to be left alone." The Cathari ambassador tried to shout over the transmission, but no one heard him, because even as the words faded, something far greater appeared. "Live feeds from Sol system." On every screen in every world, the galaxy watched as the skies above Earth came alive. First came the shadows, vast black silhouettes, rising from beneath the lunar surface. Ancient shipyards, long believed abandoned, roared with sudden light. Colossal warships emerged, their hulls scarred from old wars, their cannons glowing faintly red. One by one, they took position. The united Terran fleet, hundreds of ships, carriers, destroyers, dreadnoughts, vessels once thought consigned to history, now reawakened, and behind them, new ships, sleek, deadly, built in secret across hidden yards. The human fleet stretched across the void like a wall of steel and fire. The galaxy gasped. For centuries, humanity had hidden its strength. They had played the part of isolationists, retreating from council politics, letting the younger species laugh at their silence. Now the truth was revealed. The Terrans had never been weak. They had been waiting. Their fleets had been sleeping, buried, deep beneath planets hidden inside hollow moons, masked in asteroid belts, and now they had risen. The Cathari ambassador's voice broke the silence. This is an illusion, a projection. They cannot... But then another feed appeared. A Cathari patrol near the Sol border. Their ships scrambled as human vessels emerged. From hyperspace, the Cathari commander shouted orders. Their fleet turned weapons on the humans. For 3 seconds, they fought, and then the humans erased them. A single Terran ship cut through 20 Cathari warships like blades through paper. Plasma fire and rail cannons ripped them apart with surgical precision. The entire galaxy had just witnessed it. There was no illusion. The humans were back. The feed changed again, showing a single human figure standing at a podium. She was old, her hair grey, her uniform bearing the insignia of the United Terran Fleet, but her eyes were hard as iron. "I am Admiral Kira Hale, commander of the Terran fleets. To the Cathari who dared disturb our dead, we do not come to negotiate. We do not come to forgive. We come for extermination." Gasps echoed across council chambers. "To the rest of the galaxy," she continued, "remember this. Humanity does not start wars, but we will finish them. If you cross us, if you awaken our wrath, we will erase you utterly." Her voice did not rise. She spoke as if reading a simple fact, and that made it more terrifying. The broadcast ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some species demanded sanctions against Earth, others begged for peace talks. But the elder races, those who remembered the old wars, said nothing because they knew it was already too late. When humanity declared extermination, there was no turning back. The Cathari had sealed their fate. Across the Sol system, fleets assembled, massive, dreadnoughts, their hulls layered in ancient armor, carrier ships releasing swarms of fighters, escort vessels armed with rail cannons that could split moons. The humans moved with frightening efficiency. Entire fleets jumped into staging positions. Fuel depots were activated, supply chains restored, communication relays brought online. What would take most species decades, the Terrans accomplished in days. Because this was not the first time they had mobilized for extermination, they had done it before, and they would do it again. On neutral worlds, alien citizens crowded into viewing halls, watching the feeds in silence. Some whispered in awe, some in terror. They were never gone. They were only sleeping. Gods help the Cathari. Even the rival empires that had once mocked Earth now grew silent. They realized with dread, if humanity could unleash this much power so quickly, what else were they hiding? In their war council, the Cathari leaders raged. "They cannot destroy us all," one general shouted. "We have numbers, we have colonies, we have alliances." But their voices wavered, because they had seen what a single Terran ship could do. And now hundreds were moving. The Cathari Prime slammed his fist against the table. "Then let them come. We will bleed them dry. We will show the galaxy they are nothing but myths." But his words rang hollow. Even his own admirals no longer believed them. Back in Sol, Admiral Hale stood before her fleet. For a long moment she gazed at the ships, war machines forged across centuries, silent guardians of Earth. Then she spoke into the comms, her words carried to every Terran vessel. "We do not fight for conquest. We do not fight for power. We fight because they asked for it. And when humanity fights, we fight to the end." The fleet responded as one. Engines roared, cannons primed, thousands of voices shouted their oath. The galaxy shivered at the sound, and So the Terran fleets left Sol. They moved like a storm, black ships spreading into the void, engines leaving trails of fire across the stars. Every world watched them pass. Every world remembered the warning. They were not heading for diplomacy. They were not heading for compromise. They were heading for extermination. The Cathari had woken the dead, and now humanity was coming for them. The skies above Ketha Prime darkened. At first, the people thought it was an eclipse. The suns dimmed, shadows stretched across the great cities, and millions looked up in confusion. Then they saw the shapes. Vast, silent forms drifting above the atmosphere, blotting out the stars. Triangular, angular, black as night. Warships. Human warships. No alarms had sounded. No warnings came from the defense satellites. The planetary fleet had not even fired a shot. The humans had slipped past everything. Panic spread like fire through the streets. Families rushed into shelters. Soldiers scrambled to their stations. Sirens wailed across the capital as the Cathari. High Command screamed orders into dead comms because the humans had already struck. The first explosions came not in the cities, but in orbit. Cathari shipyards, massive rings of steel that had taken centuries to build, vanished in white fire. One by one, the orbital docks fell. Dozens of half-finished warships were reduced to drifting debris before they even launched. The humans did not waste shots. Every blast hit precisely where it mattered. Control hubs, reactor cores, ammunition silos, no civilian homes, no temples. Nothing to suggest mercy, only the cold efficiency of dismantling power itself. On the ground, the military command center in the city of Harun was reduced to rubble before the generals could even evacuate. A beam of searing light cut through. 10 layers of hardened rock drilling straight into the bunker. The broadcast cut out mid-sentence. Across the planet, commanders screamed into silent channels. Their communications were collapsing one by one, towers destroyed in targeted strikes. It was as if the humans had mapped the entire world in advance, knowing exactly where to strike. In the capital, the Supreme War Council gathered in desperation. Their faces were pale, their crests flattened in fear. They bypassed the defense grid. How? One demanded. They didn't bypass it, another whispered. They shut it down. Every satellite, every relay, it's dead. They must have infiltrated long before this. The room fell silent, because that meant the humans had been planning this attack for years. Above the world, the fleet hung in silence. No bombardment of cities, no mass destruction. Instead, surgical precision. A military factory on the northern continent erupted in fire. A spaceport collapsed into dust. An orbital relay dish fell, silent and broken. The Cathari realized too late. This was not a war for territory. It was not a war for surrender. The humans were dismantling an entire civilization, piece by piece. In the great city of Jarun, millions huddled in fear. They had always believed their world untouchable. Their fleet was vast, their armies strong, but none of that mattered now. From the rooftops, they saw shadows moving through the clouds, smaller craft shaped like daggers gliding silently over the skyline, and then, without a sound, the city's central military hub collapsed. Not a single shot fired into the streets, just one building erased like it had never been. The people screamed, but no humans came down, no soldiers occupied the streets. No flag was planted. The humans had no interest in ruling. They had only come to destroy. Night fell, but the darkness was not from the suns. Everywhere, human ships drifted above the world like hunters, their outlines only visible when fire lit the sky. Factories gone, shipyards gone, command centers gone. The Cathari leaders watched in horror as their war machine was cut to pieces in silence. They are not here to fight us, one whispered. They are here to erase us. Across the planet, whispers began to spread among civilians. Why don't they kill us? Why do they only strike the army? Are we already dead, and this is just the end? Fear turned to despair, because no one could stop them. The planetary fleet, the pride of Cathar Prime, never even launched. When the hangar doors opened, they found only wreckage. Human saboteurs had already destroyed their reactors before the attack even began. The defenders never had a chance. On the second night, the power grid collapsed. Entire continents plunged into darkness as precision strikes crippled fusion plants and relay systems. But the humans still did not target homes. They wanted the Cathari to watch their world unravel. They wanted them to understand helplessness. From orbit, a single transmission echoed across every remaining channel. The humans did not show a face. No admiral, no fleet commander, only a voice, cold, distant. You began this. You thought us weak. You thought us forgotten. Now you will learn. Piece by piece, we will take away your strength until nothing remains. This is not conquest. This is justice. And then silence again. The Cathari Prime sat in the ruins of his war chamber, listening to the voice echo in his mind. His people begged him to surrender, to plead for mercy. But deep inside, he understood the truth. There would be no surrender, no negotiations. The humans were not here to accept apologies. They were here to erase an empire. By the third night, the skies above Cathar Prime were filled with wreckage. Burning ships rained down like meteors, striking wastelands and oceans. The once proud Cathari fleet was nothing but ash. And still, the humans did not stop. They moved deeper, hunting every military outpost, every shipyard, every hidden armory. The Cathari began to realize that their war was already lost. The only question left was how long they would be allowed to suffer before the end came. And so, under the shadow of black warships, the homeworld of the Cathari trembled. They had thought humanity was weak. They had thought Earth was silent. But the silence had only been sleep. And now the humans had awakened. The Cathari had woken the storm, and the storm had come for them. The stars became a graveyard. Everywhere. The Cathari fled. They found the same sight waiting. Human warships. Silent, dark, already there. At first, the refugees thought it was chance. They jumped through hidden routes, desperate to escape the fire raining on their homeworld. But the humans were waiting at the edges of each system. Black, silhouettes drifting in the void, their weapons glowing faintly, ready to strike. Convoys vanished without a trace. The few that survived returned with whispers, whispers of ships that moved like shadows, slipping past every scanner, every watchtower. No one could explain how humanity always knew where they would run. It was as if the humans could see the future. On Cathari broadcasts, leaders shouted for resistance. They called for unity, for bravery, for sacrifice. But their soldiers were tired, their fleets broken, their courage drained away by the endless silence of space, the silence that came after every battle, when nothing remained of their comrades but drifting wreckage. And the civilians, they no longer believed their leaders, because the humans were everywhere. The first alliances formed in desperation. Old rivals were called upon, former enemies begged for aid. The Cathari promised riches, territory, shared technology, anything. But the answers came back cold. No one dared. Every race remembered the old wars. They remembered the last time humanity rose in anger, when 3 great empires had fallen within a single generation. No one wanted to share the same fate, so the galaxy watched in silence. The Cathari screamed for help, and the stars gave them nothing. At the edge of the Cernic Nebula, the last remnants of the third Cathari fleet tried to make a stand. They positioned themselves inside the clouds of gas, hoping the interference would hide them. For hours, they believed they were safe. And then, without warning, their ships began to die. Not with fire, not with massive barrages, but with silence. One Ship after another simply vanished from sensors. Crews screamed into comms before the lines went dead. The survivors described it later, black shapes emerging from the nebula itself, sliding through the mist like predators in water. They struck without sound, without mercy, and disappeared again. When the battle ended, no wreckage remained. Only the echo of dying voices carried across the nebula. The message was clear. There was no place to hide. On the ground, colonies burned, not with mass bombardments, not with civilian slaughter. The humans never wasted fire on homes. Instead, they cut out the heart of each world. Military stations, fuel depots, shipyards, all erased in a matter of hours. Then, the human ships left, leaving the civilians alive. But broken, the Cathari called this cruelty. But to the galaxy it was worse than cruelty. It was strategy. The humans were not fighting to rule. They were fighting to erase the Cathari's future. Without fleets, without weapons, without hope, their empire was collapsing in silence. Desperation turned to madness. One Cathari admiral, cornered on the rim of the VAR system, broadcast his surrender. His fleet powered down. His ships drifted. In silence, weapons offline. The humans approached slowly, their dark hulls reflecting no light. For a brief moment, hope returned. Perhaps mercy still existed, and then the human fleet opened fire. The admiral's ships were reduced to burning fragments in minutes. No survivors. The galaxy understood then. This was not conquest, not negotiation. This was erasure. Refugees began to scatter blindly. Entire populations abandoned their colonies, fleeing into uncharted space. But everywhere they went, they found the same nightmare waiting. Sometimes the humans struck immediately, tearing convoys apart. Other times, they simply shadowed the refugees, silent, watching, following them across the void until panic consumed every soul aboard. And then days later, the strike would come. No escape, no refuge. The humans were always there. Whispers grew in the galactic markets. Traders spoke in hushed voices, fearful of being overheard. They say the humans have eyes in every system. They say their ships move faster than light. They say they already knew the Cathari's secrets before the war began. Rumors spread that humanity had not been sleeping for centuries at all, that instead they had been watching, waiting, listening. And when the Cathari struck, the humans simply opened the vault of vengeance they had prepared long ago. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, ambassadors argued. Some demanded intervention. Some whispered that the Cathari had brought this fate upon themselves, but none dared move. Because to move against humanity was to step into the storm, and no empire was willing to risk its own survival. For the Cathari, the truth became undeniable. Every battle ended the same way. Their fleets dissolved into ash, their colonies stripped of defense, their people left stranded in the dark. The humans were not fighting for territory, they were fighting for erasure. The Cathari Empire was no longer a power. It was prey, and the predators had no intention of stopping. In the silence between battles, Cathari survivors whispered a single question. If humanity could do this to them, what would happen if they ever turned their eyes on the rest of the galaxy? No one dared. Answer, the plea began as a whisper, a desperate transmission sent from a ruined Cathari world, bouncing across relay stations, scattered on every frequency. If they destroy us today, tomorrow it will be you. The words carried far, across the trade lanes, into the council, her chambers, into the ears of species who had sworn never to interfere, but the galaxy stayed silent. Everyone remembered the old wars. Everyone remembered what happened when humans grew angry. Entire empires had vanished, entire species wiped from maps, and no one dared invite that storm upon themselves. In the Cathari capital, what remained of their leadership gathered. Their world was half dark, its great towers shattered, its skies still scarred from precision strikes. They sat in silence, voices trembling, until their prime speaker finally broke it. "We must beg them," he said. "We must kneel, or we are finished." Some protested. Pride still lived in a few of them. They had been conquerors once, feared across 100 systems. To beg was shame, but shame was nothing compared to extinction. And so the message was sent, a signal to Earth. "We surrender. Spare us. We ask for peace." The reply came in less than a day. No warm words, no mercy, just a flat transmission repeated across every frequency. "You wanted war. You will have extinction." The voice was human, cold, unbroken, without hesitation. It was not a negotiation. It was a sentence. The Cathari broadcast again, this time to the galaxy. "If they end us, they will not stop. They will turn on you. Help us, and we will stand together. If we fall, you will be next." The message echoed across 1,000 systems. But the council chambers remained silent. No fleets were dispatched. No aid was offered, because the ambassadors remembered. They remembered what happened the last time a species stood beside humanity's enemies. Not one of them survived. Still, some smaller races tried in secret. A delegation of Thari merchants carried a message ship toward human space. They begged to deliver words of peace. They carried gifts, promises, apologies. Their vessel never returned. Another attempt came from the Vael, a quiet people with no armies. They sent envoys into the dark, seeking humanity's forgiveness. Their transmission was cut off, mid-sentence. The humans ignored every plea. The galaxy realized the truth. This was not war. This was extermination. Rumors began to spread. Whispers carried by smugglers echoed in black markets and shadowed ports. They say Earth has awakened weapons from before the silent era. They say their fleets carry something older than light drives. They say the humans have unlocked ancient fire that even the old empires feared to touch. At first, many dismissed it as panic, but then came the sightings. In 3 separate systems, witnesses described the same vision. Ships that were not ships, vast constructs that dwarfed dreadnoughts, engines burning with light that warped the stars themselves. The survivors swore they saw space itself bend when the weapons fired. Nothing survived the blasts, not even wreckage. The Cathari screamed that the humans were using forbidden technology, that this was beyond war, beyond sanity. But the council stayed silent. In refugee camps across the Cathari Rim, despair grew. Families huddled in darkness, waiting for ships that never came. Entire generations watched the skies, praying for someone, anyone, to stand against the humans, but no one came. Even the smugglers abandoned them. Because to trade with the Cathari now was to invite death, and no one wished to be noticed by Earth. On the galactic networks, commentators tried to soften the truth. The humans only want justice, they claimed. They will stop once the Cathari are punished. But the facts told another story. The humans did not stop. Every world that once bore the Cathari banner was struck. Every fleet dismantled. Every trace of their civilization erased. The humans were not punishing. They were erasing. In the shadow of their dying empire, the Cathari leaders gathered once more. "This is beyond war," one whispered. "They mean to kill the idea of us." The prime speaker's voice was hollow. "Then the galaxy must choose. If they remain silent, it will be their turn next." But even as he spoke, the chamber lights flickered. A low rumble shook the ground. Above, their heads high in orbit, human ships had arrived. The councillors stared at one another in silence. No words left to say. They had begged for peace, and peace had been denied. The galaxy watched. Billions of eyes tuned into intercepted feeds, watching. Human fleets move like shadows across Cathari space, watching cities go dark, one by one, and in every heart, a question grew. If humanity was capable of this, would they ever stop? The smaller races trembled. The great empires whispered behind closed doors, and all of them asked the same thing. Had the Cathari unleashed not just their own end, but the beginning of something far greater, something none of them would be able to stop? The humans said nothing. Their fleets spoke for them, and their message was clear. This was extinction. They called it the last stand. 1,000 ships gathered at the edge of the Etherian expanse, the final stronghold of the Cathari race. Every cruiser, every battleship, every corvette that still had power was dragged here. Even freighters had weapons strapped to their hulls. It was all they had left. Their leaders promised salvation. If we fight together, if we hold the line, they cannot break us. But the soldiers did not believe. Not really. They had seen too much. Entire fleets erased, worlds burning without fire, shadows falling across the stars. Still, they came. Because if they ran, there was nowhere left to go. The fleet stretched across the void, lines of silver and iron glowing with engine light. Thousands of voices echoed across the comm channels, captains steadying their crews, soldiers whispering prayers. On every ship, the same thought circled. This is the end. When the humans came, they did not arrive in silence. They arrived like a storm. First, the sensors faltered. Static consumed the displays. Thousands of Cathari ships blinked red with warning alarms. Scanners failed. Targeting systems shut down. Then the stars themselves shifted. Human vessels slid from the void, massive and dark, their hulls swallowing light. They did not roar. They did not announce themselves. They simply appeared one after another until an entire armada encircled the battlefield. The Cathari fleet had thought themselves mighty with 1,000 ships. The humans had brought 10,000. The first volleys began without warning. Blinding lances of white light cut through the dark, striking Cathari ships before they could even raise their shields. Entire formations shattered in seconds. Cruisers split apart like broken glass, spilling. "Fire into the void!" The Cathari fired back desperately. Beams of plasma, swarms of torpedoes, everything they had, but nothing found its mark. The human ships moved like shadows, slipping between targeting locks, vanishing from scans, reappearing in perfect formation. Every shot from the Cathari fleet struck empty space, and then came the doomsday weapons. Across the human armada, strange engines flared. The void trembled. From the human warships, orbs of crackling light were hurled into the enemy lines. At first they looked harmless, just spheres of glowing energy. Then they detonated. The blast did not explode outward. Instead, space folded inward, collapsing like shattered glass. Entire squadrons were crushed into nothing, their hulls crumpling, as if the void itself swallowed them. Sensors screamed, navigation collapsed. Half the Cathari fleet went blind as gravitational storms ripped through the battlefield. Ships collided with one another, blind and broken. Some were pulled into the folds of collapsing space, torn apart in silence. The humans moved untouched, their vessels gliding smoothly through the chaos, as if the storms had been made for them alone. Desperation consumed the Cathari commanders. "All ships, forward, ram them if you must. For our people." Thousands of engines flared. The fleet surged toward the humans in one final charge, but the humans were ready. Their armada shifted, dividing into wings, each moving with impossible precision. The charging Cathari ships entered a storm of fire. Beam weapons carved through hulls. Rail slugs punched holes the size of cities. Entire warships were erased in single blasts. The charge dissolved into chaos. Some Cathari ships tried to retreat. Others rammed blindly into human vessels, only to break apart against shields thicker than mountain walls. Every desperate tactic failed. Because this was not war. This was judgment. From the bridge of the Cathari flagship, the Prime Speaker watched. In horror, "We are dying," he whispered. His fleet commander stood beside him, face pale. "No, we are not dying. We are being erased. On the screen, their last squadrons flickered red, one after another. Thousands of ships lost, thousands of lives gone in minutes. The humans gave no quarter, no pause, no chance for mercy. Every shot was precise, every strike was final. It was not battle, it was execution. Still, the Cathari fought. Even as their numbers dwindled, even as their ships fell burning into the void, they refused to surrender, because surrender meant nothing now. And so the battlefield echoed with their final screams. Captains shouting as their ships tore apart, pilots roaring as they hurled themselves into the enemy. One last act of defiance. But the humans did not notice. They moved through the carnage like machines, unstoppable, unbroken. The Cathari might as well have been shadows. Hours passed, then minutes, then seconds. At last, silence fell. The Cathari fleet, once 1,000 strong, was gone. Nothing but drifting wreckage remained. Fires burned in the void, silent and eternal. The humans did not celebrate. They simply reformed their lines, their vast armada shifting into perfect order once more. The Prime Speaker, watching from his crippled flagship, felt tears burning in his eyes. "This is not war," he whispered again. "It is judgment." And then his ship was gone. Across the galaxy, the feeds spread. Billions had watched the battle, every transmission hacked and shared. Billions saw the truth with their own eyes. The Cathari were no more. Their last fleet had died screaming into the void, and the humans stood victorious. In the silence that followed, a single thought echoed across the galaxy. If this was what they did to the Cathari, what would happen if they turned on anyone else? The question hung in every council chamber, in every palace, in every quiet home. The galaxy trembled, because humanity had not just returned. Humanity had reminded them all why they were meant to be left alone. Silence. The stars above the Cathari homeworld glowed cold, untouched. No signals came from the surface. No fleets circled the skies, no voices whispered on the comm channels. The Cathari were gone, every city burned, every ship destroyed, their records, their histories, their art deleted. Their very name was erased from galactic registers as if they had never existed, and in the stillness that followed, the galaxy trembled. The humans did not linger. Once the last stronghold fell, the United Terran fleet moved with terrifying precision. Their warships scoured the void, not for survivors, but for remnants. Beacons, archives, star charts, anything that spoke of the Cathari was erased. Entire libraries of data were rewritten. Maps of the galaxy were updated. The stars that once bore the Cathari's names were claimed by silence, their history rewritten by fire. From the outer colonies to the Council's core worlds, billions of eyes watched the feeds in disbelief. The humans had not only destroyed a race, they had erased them. On the ruined surface of Cathar Prime, silence stretched across blackened continents. Cities once filled with light and voices were nothing but skeletons of ash. At the heart of the capital stood a single monument, untouched by fire. It was not Cathari, it was human. The message carved into its surface was simple, written in a language most species did not understand, but its translation spread across the galaxy in hours. Do not awaken us again. Panic spread faster than fire. In council chambers, leaders argued in whispers. Some called for unity, for alliances to guard against Earth. Others silenced them, terrified that even speaking of retaliation might draw human eyes their way. Merchants scrubbed trade records. Historians deleted archives. The very memory of the Cathari vanished overnight, and everywhere the same fear grew. If the humans had chosen one species for extinction, what would happen if they chose another? The smaller races huddled in silence, sending no signals, praying that Earth would not notice them. The stronger empires, once arrogant, once sure of their power, looked inward. Their fleets were vast, their weapons mighty, yet when they remembered the Cathari's last stand, when they replayed the battle where 1,000 ships died in minutes, their courage dissolved into dust. Even the great powers understood the truth. Against humanity, they were nothing. Still, whispers rose in the dark corners of the galaxy. Some asked, why had humanity waited so long? Why had they remained silent for centuries, hiding in the cradle of Sul, their fleets asleep, their armies unseen? Others answered, because the humans had no need to act until someone provoked them, and now that they had awakened, no one could know when they would sleep again or when they might rise once more. On Earth itself, the fleets returned to silence. The great warships slid back into their docks, their engines cooling, their weapons sheathed. To the outside galaxy, no words came, no treaties, no warnings, no explanations, only silence. As if humanity had spoken once and expected the message to be remembered forever. Across the stars, fear became law. Captains ordered their crews never to approach Sul. Merchants redrew their routes to avoid human space. Historians taught the young to speak softly of the past. The council debated new accords, new rules. But in the end, none were passed, because every delegate knew the same truth. It did not matter what the council declared. If humanity was ever angered again, there would be no council, no debate, no plea for peace. There would only be fire. And so, silence became the galaxy's answer. Species watched and waited and whispered in fear. Every time a human ship left Sol, eyes followed it, wondering if it was the beginning of another purge. Every time Earth spoke in the council chambers, entire empires flinched, wondering if they had somehow offended. No one dared test the boundary. No one dared ask for mercy, because mercy had been buried with the Cathari. Yet the greatest fear was not what had happened. It was what had not yet come. Because the galaxy knew humans were not conquerors. They did not seek thrones or empires. They did not fight for land or wealth. They fought only when provoked, and when they did not forgive. They erased. In the centuries to come, children of 1,000 worlds would whisper the same question. Before sleep, when will the humans be angered again? The answer was never given, but across the silent stars, the echo of extinction remained. A warning carved into the bones of the galaxy. Do not awaken us again.